Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Search, Deploy, Commit. Thank you so much for being here and listening. I have our esteemed guest, Texx, who longtime player of the game Warzone, top finisher in many tournaments, and host of many more, world title holder of AWP, and many other places. Texx, thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. I love the podcast, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's really great. I think I'm always impressed with. I mean, I consider you a pro player myself. Obviously, you've got many titles, and I think having someone that's as competitive as you are in the game, I get little glimpses of that when I play. I'm not definitely in the competitive scene as much as you are, but it's really an honor to just talk to you and discuss strategy and Warzone in general. I always love talking about it, but your caliber of player really kind of brings up the level of conversation for me personally. So I was curious, I'm not going to give away where you're from, but I'm curious how you came up with the name. Where does Texx come from for you?
So many people think it's going to do with Texas. No, I'm Australian. Texx is actually short for vortex.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I was wondering. I wasn't sure if if it had something to do with that. I figured you had an explanation. So that lines up. That makes sense. Glad we could clear the air on that here so that hopefully you don't get too many more of those anymore. But you've obviously got a name in the community anyway, so I don't think that's going to be, much of a problem. Before that, though, when you were getting those questions, how did you kind of get started in Warzone? What kicked it off for you?
Well, you said that I'm a long-time player, and it's sort of true. I've been around. I first played the game in 2012. Okay, but I haven't played it consistently since 2012. In 2012, I found the game on one of the websites. Like, as a kid, you used to play like Miniclip and Armor Games and Congregate and all that stuff, and so I found it on there. And I've always been an intelligent kid, and I played chess when I was younger, and so I found this turn-based strategy game, and I'm like, man, this is so sick. I had no idea what Risk was. Right? A lot of people come in here and they're like, "Oh, I was looking for a game of Risk, and I found this." It's like, I didn't know what Risk was until like 2 years ago. Right?
Wow.
So I was just happy to find like a cool looking turn-based strategy game.
Nice.
But back then, I just played open games. One of my favorite things to play was Big USA 5v5s.
Wow.
Big thing back in the day, and they used to go on for like hours, and then I'd never finish it, and I'd always get booted.
You would do real time? You would do real time 5v5s?
Yeah, on
Wow.
a map that's like 1,000 territories or something.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
That's a long game to play real time. That's crazy.
Well, I stopped playing because I always used to play on like a library computer or my parents' laptop because I had no personal device. I was just back in 2012. I was 11 years old.
Wow.
And I stopped playing because I had no personal device to keep playing it on. And then I came back again in 2015 when I got my first smartphone. And then I quit again. I don't know why I quit again, but I did. Then again, I came back in 2020, COVID stuff. But I had a bad win rate on my old account. And so I stopped playing on that account because some bloke in a 2v2 game, I tried to give him advice, and he said to me, "I'm not going to listen to you because you got a bad win rate." Right? So, and so I stopped playing on that super old account. I created a new account, uh, and now I use the same thing when people don't listen to me. I'm like, bro, stop! Look at my win rate.
I mean, credit to you. I think that's really obviously a big part of how people, especially competitive players like yourself, look at and try and judge out where they fall in line. I'm curious. So is that change when you were challenged on that and you said, I got to get, my win rate up? Was that when you decided to start playing more competitively, or were you always kind of attracted to that? Playing in tournaments, playing on trying to get on the ladders, and take those number one spots. What kind of started that for you?
Actually, I never thought of it that way, but I think you might be right. When I first started to focus on my win rate, I was just playing like I started the new account. I started Texx as like a 1v1 account, and I was just like, oh, how high can I get my win rate? And just playing quick matches and stuff, it was like 75%. And uh, but eventually, and then I did get into the competitive scene um, through the PR league, um, hosted by Almost Tricky, and I joined one season of the PR league. And my first season, I got paired up with other top players like um, Mr. Carpenter and Johnny Silverhands. Because in the bottom divisions, you always have new guys that are joining to climb a ladder. So these bottom divisions can sometimes be tougher than the division above it, right? And
Interesting.
so I got paired with Mr. Carpenter, Johnny Silverhands, and I think I lost to Johnny, beat Mr. Carpenter, and uh, secured promotion. But I didn't play in the next season because uh, I got a new job, and the new job was quite physical, and I quit the game for another 2 years, and I joined back again in 2022, and again I just got into playing quick match, open games, some Diplos, and then I got recruited by Harmony, and that's when I sort of started kicking off my competitive career.
So do you feel that when you joined Harmony, was being a part of Harmony really what helped kind of encourage you to start playing more competitively? I mean, was that just kind of the nature of being in that clan, or do you feel that it was just always inside of you since that initial firing point?
Well, joined Harmony, and they had some weekly tournaments. And so I joined the weekly tournaments, started doing well in them, realized I'm pretty good. Well, I always knew that I was pretty good, but I have nothing to compare myself with, right? Uh, and then I started doing good in these tournaments, and then I got noticed by leadership, and they said, "Yo, you want to play for us in Clan League?" And so Clan League in 2023 was my first proper introduction to the competitive scene. But yeah, just joining Harmony in general, it gave me a sense of community that I didn't realize would be so motivating. To play for my clanmates, to represent them, to have them backing me up when I uh, when I lose and when I win, and just I don't know, the power of friendship. that's
Yeah,
maybe what propelled me to the next level.
that's cool. I mean, and obviously, I mean, your list on your profile shows all of the championships that you've won. Obviously, a lot of them are within the Harmony clan, but anybody that's played Warzone for a long time knows that that's a long-standing Very competitive, very tenured group, and clan in general. Obviously, very prestigious to be winning any kind of those tournaments, right? PR League champ, public tourney champ, tournament champion 20 times over. You've been undefeated in Clan League, Division B, which again, you know, fantastic. And then you have a World Tour title for the AWP. Tell me a little bit about that particular world title.
All right. Well, I first had a shot at getting a world title on. I'll tell you about the world tour first. There's different levels of tournaments. Just like tennis, you've got your majors, and you've got your smaller tournaments. And uh, there's 4 Grand Slams a year. And I first joined the world tour because uh, I was I trained a lot for Clan League 16, and I played many games on the template Elitist Africa, and I figured I was quite good at it. I joined the Grand Slam that was happening on Elitist Africa, and that was my debut tournament, and I got to the finals, the grand finals of the debut of my debut tournament, and I lost to Tornado, who is the greatest World Tour player. Second's not even close to him. So that was my first shot at it, and I'd gotten somewhat close in Timid Lands and other tournaments, but Clan League 17 comes around, and again, my 1v1 template that I was playing was a similar bonus system to Elitist Africa called INSS, and I practiced that template as well, and a 250 series came around. That's the weakest, least prestigious tournament, and then so I joined that on Assertive, and I ended up making a pretty good run, beating some quite strong players, and I beat Alex Exclusive, who is considered the best assertive player in the final, and that was it's not my best result on the world tour. My best result would be the coming second place in a Grand Slam. That gets you 900 points, and winning a 250 series gets you 250 points. So I've had a lot of better results on the world tour than the tournament that I won, but it was still the first one that I won on a template that I find suits me very well, and so yeah, it's quite special to me.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think what's really interesting, I found that even in my own play, that there's not necessarily well, maybe there is for you, but there's not necessarily a moment in certain matches. It's more the match in its entirety, because there's too many of those moments, I think, right? It's when you feel the tipping point in the match and you sense that victory is coming, right? That those things stand out, and that even as you're recalling, you're remembering the matches and the achievement of hitting that. Obviously you realize that you had a skill and a talent for it. What was it that stood out for you that helped you identify that, wow, I'm really good at this? Like, how did you lean in on that and discover, like, when do you feel like it clicked for you?
The game in general?
Yeah, I mean, was there a moment around, not necessarily maybe even an individual game, or as you started to win some of those games, maybe more, what was it that stood out to you in those games that gave you that defining edge that could help you understand, wow, this is really something I can take to the next level?
Um, for me, it's specific accomplishments that sort of make me realize, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this game. And there's specific periods which I remember where I've seen myself grow as a player. Um, when I first joined Harmony, as I said, was one of them. Uh, just that sense of community helped me become a stronger player in general, and try a lot more in my games, and try to and focus on improving. The second was probably performing performing well in Clan League 16, or perhaps getting the most wins, almost getting a perfect season in Clan Wars in season 29. And then another one would be, my most recent one would be recently, when uh, a lot of accomplishments happened at the same time, or a lot of achievements happened at the same time. That's going undefeated in Clan League B. At the same time that I was going undefeated, I won my first World Tour title. I started doing very well in Clan Wars. I was already doing very well in Clan Wars, but I started doing like the best player sort of type sort of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Um, and I went on a 35 game win streak against, which ended a couple days ago. But I went on a 35 game win streak against Harmony's rivals in Clan Wars Prime. So, at the same time, all these crazy things were happening, and I'm like, okay, maybe I've jumped up to the next level. Getting
Yeah.
back to back top results on the seasonal ladder was another sort of stepping point in my confidence as a player. Knowing that, yeah, maybe I'm one of the best.
Right. Yeah, and I think when you talk about being one of the best, what really separates, when you start getting into those higher tier moments, when you talk about some of the matches you've had against some of the greats that have even been on the show, what do you feel are the main differences between those types of players like yourself and players that are just not quite there? What are the things that are missing? What are those intangibles that are maybe hard for them to grasp that you guys seem to have figured out?
That's a very tough question to answer, because it's not like there's a group of us and then them.
Sure.
It's a ladder of players that that get consistently better until you get to the top. Um, and
I
I'm not
mean, and it's
sure.
okay if you say it's, luck or or maybe it's just a commitment to the game itself. I wanted to get your personal maybe perspective on it.
That's a big motivation is a big deal when you're trying to separate the top players in the game. And a motivated, strong player will 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 beat the best players, the top five in the game. I mean, we saw that recently in a best of 11 again with Giant Frog and Beep Beep I'm a Jeep. Uh, we see it. We see it all the time with iRise, another great player who's currently doing horribly in Clan League. Uh, we all have bad moments that we want to forget, and strings of losses. But overall, it's motivation that separates the top players.
Interesting. I think that's a hot take. I think it's a good one though, in that um, everybody has lapses, but what keeps you motivated to stay at the top and compete at that high level? I mean, there's a lot of detail and things that have to happen depending on the map type, and there's so many variables in Warzone, so much strategy, and without maybe giving away your own individual strategy, which I'm sure to some degree your opponents have studied and watched how your play style works. What are the main maybe focuses on the strategy in Warzone that you really enjoy? Maybe not necessarily are key to what helps you win, but what are the parts of the strategy that you enjoy the most?
I'm. This is a weakness of my game. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Okay, a weakness of my game is probably that I'm overly aggressive,
Mm.
and maybe that's just like a maybe that's just a fear to like not be like a coward or not
Mm.
do cowardly things, but yeah, sometimes I attack when I shouldn't. That loses me a lot of games,
Mm.
um, and sometimes I try to go for a kill shot when I should just be patient.
Mm.
Uh, um, a couple examples would be a Nations Cup game against an infamous Nations Cup game against Platinum last year. Is when I tried to take a first turn bonus in his face, and he just full deployed and just countered me, and I looked like a fool. And he's clowning me for a full year later as well. But just specific. But then in the same competition, in the same Nations Cup against Winnie, I had choked off the entire top of the board, even though I was behind on income, behind on armies, at a solid position, and my I just planted my stack in one specific area of the board and captured uh, captured more income than him, and eventually took over the game that way. Yeah, that's a focus on my game that I've been trying to improve on. Is just more patience.
Interesting. But it sounds like the flip of that, playing aggressive, is something that you enjoy, which I think is a really fun part of Warzone in general, is when to be aggressive, because obviously in certain cases that's necessary, and in other times when to not be. Um, I think
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I mean, if that's a point in the game that I struggle with, then I'm
It's
sure
not just you.
it's yeah.
Yeah, I think there's, you talk about income, and this is something I haven't really talked with other competitive players about, but how much, number crunching do you go through when you are, planning things out? I mean, I haven't talked to anybody about this, and you don't have to give away your secrets, but I'm curious how much Excel math is happening in the background with some of these pro players. If that's a common practice, maybe just shed some light on the high end level of competition that maybe uh, isn't seen by a normal player such as myself.
Well, for me, there's no Excel math that's happening. It's all in your head. Um, but there is there's a fair bit of math that's involved in expanding in the most efficient way, um, clashes of army attacks. Uh, um, I mean, the whole game is numbers. So
Right.
uh,
100%.
numbers and positioning. That's pretty much the the entire game. So there's a lot of math involved, but not as much as you expect.
Sure. Yeah, and I think uh, you know one thing that we could kind of transition to from being a pro player that you have and learned all this strategy and achieved so much, you also are hosting events. And as of the recording of this episode, you're hosting a current in-clan tournament for a cash prize, like a real cash prize. And I think that's pretty cool. Maybe speak to what led you to start hosting tournaments. Was it that you wanted to set the rules yourself, or what was it that really made you want to start hosting them instead of just being a player?
Well, I started doing well first of all, I love tournaments. I love that there is something to aim for at the end of the road. A trophy or, or, or something that you can put on your resume, which I always do. So I don't like ladders. I don't like ladders that much because it doesn't feel like a game is important. You're not playing for your tournament. It feels like when you play for a tournament, at the start of the tournament, you're playing for the potential to remain in the tournament, the potential to continue, to continue. It's like if you win a round and you score points in a tournament, sure, that game itself might be worth 40 points on the Orc World Tour.
Mm.
But you've also got a potential to earn more points. So losing a game loses you potential. And then towards the end, when games become valuable in terms of points, or in terms of the amount of players that you're standing over, the mountains of corpses that you're standing over, then the stakes of that sort of gets my adrenaline pumping, right? Because when you win when you win a tournament, or when you do well in a tournament, it's not just you beat 7 players to win the tournament. You beat everyone in the tournament to win the tournament, right?
Yeah.
If you make it out of one quadrant of a bracket and that tournament has 64 players, well, you're the king of those 16 players in the quadrant, even though you've won, say, 3 games to be the king.
Right. Right.
You're standing on top of 15 other players. And so those sort of high stakes is what I love about tournaments. And when I first joined Harmony, I started playing their tournaments. I started doing well in them. And eventually there was a period where the guy who ran the tournaments, which is K7 or Hornbeck, it's Hornbeck spelled backwards, K-Seb, right? That's what I call him in my head. K-Seb stopped doing the tournaments. Like, there was a gap of 2 or 3 weeks where he didn't do any. And so I stepped up. I'm like, bro, do you want me to, if you're busy in real life, do you want me to run these tournaments for you? He's like, sure, have your way with them. At the time, I'd already created the Harmony Tournament Leaderboard, the HTL. And it was basically, I scored everyone's position in the tournament, much like the Orc World Tour does, and I added it up in a leaderboard. And that got me sort of sway with the Harmony management. It allowed me to become a Harmony manager, me taking initiative and creating stuff for the clan. And eventually I overtook the tournaments and started making the tournaments. And there was a period of Harmony number 21 to 24 where K-Seb wanted to add more players to the tournament, and so he invited other clans. He invited Fancy Dot, Sparta, a couple others which aren't coming to mind.
He didn't invite Prime, did he?
No. Well, we weren't rivals. We weren't actually rivals with Prime back then. But
it was a little different.
yeah, he invited some other players, and
Sure.
eventually I created the HTL finale, and that's a series of 13 tournaments. The best players from those 13 tournaments qualify for the finale. These are the highest these are the highest scorers, and they play in a round robin series where the top seeds get passes into the next round, and the bottom seeds play a 4 round robins of 4 players against the other 3 players, and that's 12 games total. The top 2 advance, and then they play the next top 2 seeds from the regular season. And there was a guy who won Harmony number 22, I think, Anditich, Ando, Odysseus is his nickname. And Ando was in Eagle Fang Dojo, another clan. And when I said, bro, you've qualified for this tournament, this finale by winning this tournament, uh, he's like, yo, this sounds cool. My clan doesn't have this. Let me in. And I'm like, for sure, bro, you're in. And then that inspired me to create the public tournaments, because I could attract players to the clan. I could promote the clan, and
Like a recruiting tool, really.
sure, that's what it started as. But eventually, it turned into these mega tournaments of 400 plus players, and
Wow.
and the tournaments themselves have, at least in my mind, become quite prestigious, just due to the size of them. And there's one coming up in a couple days as well.
Wow. So you've just been really kind of handed the keys to the kingdom for doing all this, but on top of that, you've created an initiative, for even improving upon what was currently in place. And I think any clan is happy to have members like that. And I think you're obviously, this entire time you've been talking about the proponent of clans and the friendships that are created inside of that. Tell me a little bit about, we haven't really gotten into the rivalries per se between clans on the show before. Tell us a little bit about the history between this rivalry. And it sounds like it's relatively new between you guys and Prime.
All right. Okay.
Yep. I'm going to give you the opportunity to come out live and tell everybody what's going on.
Harmony were getting were new to Clan Wars, and I was new to Harmony, and I wanted to make Clan Wars a big thing in Harmony, and I went to the leader of Prime, and Prime at this time had been the best casual clan for many seasons. And I went to Fivesmith, the leader of Prime, and I said, "Yo, man, I love what you're doing I love what you're doing with the clan. You got any tips for me?" He's like, he gave like a half-hearted response, and I'm like, "Man, if I could just get into Prime, and I could see the community that you've built in there, and I could get some tips. Maybe I could bring it back to Harmony, and we can create like some more competition at the top of the Clan Wars leaderboard." He's like, "No, I'm not creating another competitor to my clan." And
Wow.
I said, "Well, screw it. I'm just gonna do my own thing and do it anyway." And we created a culture around Clan Wars, and the main thing that we were focusing on was participation. We didn't care if you win. Just try to play as much as possible. And eventually the requirement for playing as much as possible went from 30% of days in a season up to like 50%. And then now we don't really have requirements, but it's sort of like if you're at the if you're a standout bad player in terms of participation in the clan, then you're kicked from the clan temporarily. Okay, it's not as cutthroat as people like to make it out as, but we kick you from the clan because if you're going to take one of the 40 spots on the roster and you're not going to play, then we're going to remove you for the first couple days of the season till we fill up our roster, and then we're going to invite you back so that you can't mistakenly join Clan Wars again. And that's led to a lot of players, I guess, in ways misunderstanding us, that they're permanently kicked, but they're not. And half of the players that we do kick leave permanently. But eventually we built a culture around Clan Wars. We got a bunch of active players, and we built it up from scratch. Whereas other clans, they like to recruit from Mythbusters. They like to recruit from a bunch of other clans and get ults into their clan, and then eventually they'll corrupt them and turn them into actual community members. But Prime, they do a similar sort of thing. They'll take guys from Excel, M Hunters, some other clans that escape my mind right now.
Essentially.
Kind of. I wouldn't want to use that harsh word. They kind of poach, but also these players, they want to play for a decent and competitive Clan Wars clan, and to them, Clan Wars is a big deal, a big part of their part of the game. For them, it's not as much for me, but and not as much for many other multi-day competitive players. But Clan Wars, big for some players. They joined some of these big clans because they wanted to compete. For us, we built our squad from scratch. And
so it sounds like, obviously there's been some competition going on, just in the recent past between the two of you.
Well, for 20 seasons in a row, Prime were the best non-competitive clan. Like Opti and Mythbusters, they have such strong players that they can break out of what I like to call the 50% win rate limbo, where the way that matchmaking works in Clan Wars is if you start winning, you face stronger opponents. And if you start losing, you start facing weaker opponents. And if you start losing, you'll start winning more because you're facing weaker opponents. And if you start winning, you start losing more because you're facing tougher opponents. And eventually what that happens is that clans, towards the end of the season, they'll all be around 50% win rate, give or take 5% rating points. And the only way that you can break through that is if you have a strong enough squad to get out of that limbo. And clans like Optimum and Mythbusters have elite players to get out of that limbo. And if they add on to that high participation, it turns them into a very competitive clan. And us casuals can't compete with that. So Prime to me has been the has been the benchmark for what I've been trying to do in Harmony. and we were chasing them for so long, and then we eventually caught up to them, and eventually, at least in Harmony, we sort of created a rivalry with them. I don't know how they think of us.
What their perception is. Well, currently
All
at
I
the
know is
time of
that the
this
perception
recording,
of
you're
me is
leading
that
them right now.
oh yeah, this is the best season. This currently we've got 18, 19 wins per day, and the best that any casual clan has ever done is Prime, when they did 19 wins per day back in season 28, I think,
Wow.
or 29, and and we're the problem is, I'm going off in a tangent here, but the problem with having a clan as big as Harmony with 300 plus active players is that um, you get a lot of stragglers, as I like to call them, that get
Sure.
blinded by the flashing Clan Wars light at the beginning of a new season, and they you probably always see it because you're not in a clan that gets capped at 40, but we get capped at 40 after 1 or 2 days, and that flashing light disappears because people can't play Clan Wars because we're at the cap. But for those 1 or 2 days, every 3 weeks, every time there's a new season, all 300 plus active players in our clan will get that flashing light at a time slot, and like a mosquito, they'll go towards the light. They'll click it and they'll sign up, and they will not realize that they have now committed to a very competitive um, uh, clan's roster, where you're expected to play
Sure.
almost every day. And this season, we've had no stragglers. And finally, we're showing what we're capable of when we have no stragglers. And that's why we're getting 18 to 19 wins per day, because we're getting 37 out of 40 players that play every day. Um, but yeah, for the longest time, we were chasing Prime. We caught up to them. We overtook them. And now, although we've left them in the dust this season, at least to me, I'm not concerned about Mythbusters. I know that their maximum that they've ever got is 24 wins per day out of 40. They've broken past that 50% limbo, where even if you do have maximum participation, you're only going to get 20 wins per day. They've broken past that limbo with skill and with participation, and there's no competing with them. So even though we're in second place, I have no delusions about competing for first.
Sure.
I just
Right.
look behind me and I just marvel at how far we've come, and and uh, it's nice to see the toads so far behind us.
I love it. I love it. Happy to feed the fires on friendly competition here in the Warzone community. So I really love the backstory. I think that's great. And I think, it's kind of interesting. You talk about clan wars. This kind of leads into that question that I like to ask all players, things that you would like to maybe see, not necessarily from Fizzer or from Warzone, but maybe even the community, maybe all of it, as far as changes or things you would like to see in the game or in the community more of. What are some of those things for you?
The best thing about this game is uh, the community, and the community always creates fantastic events. Clan League, the Orc World Tour, Nations Cup, Managers League. Um, and we don't tell the people that run these that run these tournaments how crucial they are to the community and how much we appreciate them. And so if I could improve anything about about the game in general is just show more appreciation for people that take the time to make the game more fun for you.
Interesting. No, I think that's a really great take. There's so many people that put so much time and effort into the game, and like you said, not just from being a player, but also from doing the kinds of things that you do, hosting tournaments, hosting games, map making, mods for those types of people. And there's not a lot of credit that's going around, which is why, I think I wanted to start this podcast. I think there's such a strong community and people really care about the game and what they're doing. And I think you guys should be credited. So good on you for the work that you're doing for your clan and for the game. I think, for that competitive scene, it's so important to have events and competitions that matter, that you want to be a part of. And I think that's really cool that you're doing those things. So kudos to you and the efforts that you're doing for Warzone.
Well, can I shout out some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Let's Fight. You've had him on the podcast before. He does an amazing job with Clan League. Almost Tricky does an amazing job with the community PR League. Rento has done a fantastic job with Nations Cup this season. Already, even though we haven't even started playing any games, just the new format, making sure that everyone knows what's going on, answering questions. A lot of work that's been done behind the scenes, I'm sure. Huge shout out to Justin R17. Without him, all of these events would be almost impossible. The work that he does with the clot is probably the most taken for granted thing in the game. I'm sure there's many people that I've missed.
There's
those
many more we could all talk about. And I think what's so great is that,
let me shout out one more guy who I reckon should be the community member of the year. One more guy.
Nomination.
It's Fivesmith himself, my arch nemesis.
I love it.
He creates some of the greatest websites, the greatest tools. I always love everything that he creates. All the forum threads that he makes are always very interesting. The newsletter that he ran was amazing as well.
Yeah.
Fivesmith is my community member of the year.
Love it. Oh man, all the good feelings in this episode. I'm telling you right now, even with the playful banter on the rivalry, I think that's great. Man, I don't even know how I could ask a question to top that right there. That was awesome. Any other thoughts from you, Texx? I think that every player that I interview on here is such a wealth of knowledge and stories and strategy. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we kind of wrap things up?
No, man. I think we've covered most of it.
Love it.
I reckon people have come in here assuming that I'm going to call out more people. I'm renowned for my trash talking, for my awesome opinions, and I don't know. Maybe there's a hot take I could give. I think that I think the pineapple on pizza is probably the best topping, other than salami. Okay.
That's got to be the hottest take we've ever had on this show. Fight in the comments below. Is all I'm going to say to that. I think that's, wow, those are fighting words for me, but we don't need to get into that here. Thank you so much, Texx, for being on the show. I had an absolute blast doing this with you, and I'm so excited to see all the other things that you're going to do in Warzone and for everything that you do. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. No, I appreciate your podcast a lot, and everyone make sure to like, subscribe, and share this. We got to make this this podcast more viewed than your number one podcast right now, which is against Alex, which is our exclusive, and we can't let Alex reign on top. That's not good for his ego. My ego can't get any bigger. So put me on the top. Get this to 500 views.
I love it. I love it.
If you're listening to this on Spotify, go straight to his YouTube channel.
You got to go to the YouTube channel. Yep. Get the counts up. Don't turn this into a YouTube battle now. Now Alex will get involved and then we'll be all in trouble. So thank you all again for listening to Search, Deploy, Commit. I didn't even have to give a spiel at the end of this one. Great job by Texx. And thank you all for listening. Hope to see you in the next episode. And we'll talk then.